This podcast is part of the Deluxe Edition Network. To find other great shows on the network, head over to deluxeeditionnetwork.com. That's deluxeeditionnetwork.com.
If your friends are nerdy and you are nerdy too, I want to talk to you. Friends talking nerdy.
This is the podcast making, public transit taking, kiss stealing, wheeling dealing, son of a gun, Tim the Nerd, welcoming you to another episode of Friends Talking Nerdy, part of the Deluxe Edition Network. Head to deluxeeditionnetwork.com to find out about all of the lovely shows on the Den. And seated next to me, we have the most electrifying professor in all of podcasting today and the new Women's World Heavyweight Champion. After defeating Becky Lynch at WrestleMania, we have Professor Aubrey. How you doing?
I'm really amazed that I conquered such feats.
Indeed, you did. And it was fun getting you to that point. Yes.
Okay, so what we're talking about is a video game. A video game in which Tim manages wrestlers that he has created. And one of the wrestlers he's created looks just like me and is my alter ego.
Yes, Professor Aubrey, the fighting professor. Yeah, WWE 2K24 is the game. Been playing that series all the way back when another company was actually running it. It was THQ initially, and then they ended up going bankrupt. And so the WWE switched companies to the 2K company. They're more known, the 2K, their other big game is the NBA 2K series. So they have a lot of experience in terms of not only giving you the core game that you want, but also little side missions as well. And in the WWE 2K24 game, with the characters you create, they have what's called a My Rise level, which is a men's storyline and a women's storyline that you go down, that you follow through on in order to open up some like unlockables and new characters along the way. And that's where Professor Aubrey was born, in her not so subtle outfit.
Well, if you listen to the show, you know that my primary interest in any sort of entertainment, particularly athletic entertainment, like the Olympics, for example, is the costumes. So in the Olympics, in the winter, my favorite is the ice skating because it has the best costumes. And in the summer, it's the synchronized swimming because they have the best costumes.
Wouldn't the gymnasts have good costumes too, depending on the country at least?
Well, usually they just have a leotard. They don't get to wear anything special.
Yeah, I guess you're right there. Yeah, no, like feather wings like Cody Rhodes has. You know, they don't go out onto the whole gymnast floor
No.
looking like America just did whatever all over their outfit.
Right.
Dirty stuff.
Dirty stuff.
But anyway, they're great games to play because the 2K games, because it's simulation, so it's not like the arcade stuff to where like one punch could send a person like 30 feet in the air or whatever, like, you know, like a Mortal Kombat type of game. It's stuff that could theoretically happen in real life, of course, but it also has its fun aspects as well. I do like some of the fantasy booking elements you get with the universe mode, which is gives you a chance to create your own show, either one of the established WWE shows that are out there, or you can create your own and add whatever wrestlers you want to the already existing shows or the new show that you want. And you can do all kinds of fun stuff that way. I know people on Twitch all the time will show like just highlights of matches they do and pretend like it's their own version of Monday Night Raw, for instance, that they're putting out.
So do they like do the color commentary or something? Or
They have to, yeah, because if you played the game with like the music and the commentary and tried to play it on either Twitch or YouTube, you would get dinged for a copyright strike.
right.
But that's another good thing about the game, though, is that they do have a setting on the inside in the game. I forgot what it's specifically called, but once you turn it on, it actually will mute the anything that's considered copyrightable. So it will allow you to play the game on a streaming service like Twitch and whatnot.
Mm.
So at that point, yeah, it would make more sense to have, the people running the Twitch channel do some sort of a running commentary throughout, because unless it's like a walkthrough for a particular level of a video game I'm stuck on, I don't know if I just want to see somebody else playing a video game without something else going on.
Right. Yeah. I would think that would be true.
Yeah. I mean, because there aren't many. I mean, I should say it like this: there are video games out there that do tell some good stories, but again, it's stories in the way that video games can present those stories, which is why you don't see that many wildly successful video game movie adaptions, for instance.
Right.
Like,
there's just not enough there.
Yeah, like Grand Theft Auto would never work as a movie. It just wouldn't. It's better in the open world setting to where you can have all kinds of wacky shit going down over a long period of time. It's not something that you can, just you can't encapsulate that series in 90 minutes, no matter how charismatic the star is that they happen to get for it.
Yeah, I mean, and they could do a story inspired by it, probably.
I don't even know if they can do that. I mean, it would be like the idea you just gave right there is kind of like what they used to do with adaptions back in the day. Like, take the first Batman movie with Michael Keaton. That was not a page to screen, like 100% accurate adaptation of what Batman was like in the comics. It was Tim Burton's own take, did his own unique things. A lot he did right in that first film, and I say that as someone who's not a fan of Tim Burton. But, again, it wasn't the traditional Batman and Robin, Caped Crusaders that you would find in the comics or in other versions like that. So it's not that I don't mind someone else doing something different. I just don't think Hollywood is going to be brave enough to do that anymore.
No, I mean, I think you're right. There's a great risk, and things are just not worth what they once were that are made in Hollywood.
Well, there's that, and it's like, I mean, I've talked about what they call soft reboots. Like the Jurassic World movie is considered a soft reboot. What does that mean? It's still set in the same world as the original film, and you will have new characters that will pop, the old characters that from the original series that will pop in and out of those films. But technically, it's still new. It's just the problem with that is the older characters are still going to be there. And when Jeff Goldblum shows up on screen, people are going to be like, hey, it's the nostalgia bug. And it's like, the older I get, like if you've listened to the early episodes of Friends Talking Nerdy, I mean, there was a point to where I was a nostalgia junkie. And now I'm at the point to where it's like, no, let's have something new for once. It's like you can appreciate the like for since we're a day past May the 4th as we record this, you can appreciate Star Wars, but when you have new Star Wars stuff happening every couple of months on Disney Plus or new announcements for new movies, it's just like it just becomes ordinary. At that point, it's not the special thing that it was anymore. And it's like, when it's done right, I don't mind a good nostalgia trip. But too many people are just using nostalgia for a cheap cash grab.
Yeah. I mean, you were just a little nostalgic just then.
How so?
Well, just you're hearkening back to the better days when things weren't so shallow.
Well, I mean, at least with me at that particular point, in terms of what I appreciated, but it's and also too, like with my taste, maybe I'm being a little hyperbolic on my end too, because tastes do change over time. I mean, you can have a big major obsession with something and it can go for 5, 10 years, sometimes longer, but then just like anything, your interest in it will start to dwindle somewhat. Like I could say the Beatles have been on that route. There was a time where I was the hugest fan, and then the interest kind of dwindled down. But that doesn't mean I don't love them. That doesn't mean I don't appreciate the experiences that I had. But I can say if there was like a new Beatles record every 6 months coming out, even today, I'd probably be a little done with it.
Huh, interesting.
It's all about knowing when to give the audience what they want, if that makes sense, and not just trying to say, take this, take this, take this, take this, and hope for the best at that point.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's what created so much blockbusteriness about things, was that it was the summer movies, and they were blockbuster summer movies. And now we just don't have such monolithic audiences. Like, it's so diverse in our country now. It's so diverse what we can make for entertainment. And so we just have lots of smaller projects.
And the bigger stuff that they do put out, again, 9 times out of 10 is going to be either already existing IP, like your comic book movies, or sequels or soft reboots, or whatever they can to make bank on older properties. Like Universal is trying once again to revive their monster franchise.
Really?
Yeah, they have a film coming out that is a remake of Dracula's Daughter.
Mm.
It may be interesting to see where they go. I know there's a new Planet of the Apes movie that's out that has had a pretty decent reception by folks, but I've not seen any of the new ones myself. I guess I was too shell-shocked. I had too much PTSD from the Tim Burton horrible version.
Oh, really?
That was one of the worst movies I have ever seen, with Marky Mark as the lead character.
Yeah.
Yeah, and like the big reveal at the end, and I don't mind saying this because one, it's an old movie, and two, it's a shit ending, is like Marky Mark escapes the planet and then goes and lands, and he thinks he's back on Earth, and it is a form of Earth, but it was set in modern day, but it was the apes, as if they had always been on Earth, and it was at the Lincoln Memorial in Washington. But instead of Lincoln as the statue, it was a big monkey. It's like, fuck you, Tim Burton. You son of a bitch.
The monkeys always win in the end.
Those damn dirty apes. I would have much preferred the Planet of the Apes musical, that they teased on The Simpsons with Troy McClure. That would have been amazing.
Yeah, that would be fun.
Yeah, just something
Maybe
different.
a fun romp.
Yeah.
I say.
Yeah, I mean, I think as long as you have Hollywood owned by big, huge corporations looking for the next big buck, the days of Hollywood taking chances on the big screen are over. On the TV, on streaming services, it's a little bit different. Obviously, not as much money goes into creating a television show compared to like a James Cameron movie, but you can also take a lot more chances on TV and streaming because of what you were talking about with the segmentation of the audience the way it is. If a majority of the people that you're going to watch are, men between 18 to 39, you know what to give them generally.
Yes. Lots of strong female characters.
Yes, and chats over tea.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. No explosions, no nothing like that. Anyway, before we move on, what would you say is one of your favorite video games?
I'm going to go with the Ocarina of Time. Link and those guys.
The Legend of Zelda?
Yes, The Legend of Zelda.
Yeah, Robin Williams loved that series and named his daughter Zelda because of those games.
Really?
Yep.
Yeah, they're really fun games, and the story is great. And I had not played any of the prior games, and so I didn't know anything about the story.
The lore.
Yeah, and so I got to know the story as I was playing the video game, and it was really hard. It's one of the hardest video games that I successfully completed.
Yeah.
It's maybe one of the only video games that I completed.
Oh no, you completed some Lego games with me.
Yes, Lego games, yes.
But
But those are like for 3-year-olds.
I would challenge you on that. They're not like super difficult. I'm not saying that, but they make them at just the right level to where both kids and adults can still get enjoyment out of it.
Yes.
And to me, that's all that matters. I mean, but of course, as I've talked about on the show before too, I'm also the guy that, for most every game I play, it's always on the easiest level and the AI sliders are slid way down for everything because I don't want to lose.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's weird. Anyway, yeah, we have over 350 plus shows now just to show how demented I am.
Or stubborn.
Stubborn or something like that. But anyway, I'm glad you got to enjoy your championship victory.
I really did. It was the most exciting thing that happened for me this weekend.
Wow.
Yeah.
That kind of weekend. All right.
Mhm.
Well, at least you had a positive there. So there you go. But speaking of someone not having a positive, Tony Khan in AEW.
Oh, yeah.
Yes. It's by the time this episode comes out, the events I'm going to talk about will have been more than a month, probably 2 months past since they initially happened, because of how polarizing current wrestling stories can be. I just didn't necessarily want to bring any unnecessary baggage just by giving an opinion. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
In terms of reaction, now that we, are on YouTube with the podcast and everything.
Mhm.
But anyway, a few weeks back, as we record this, AEW went and showed the security footage from All in Wembley where CM Punk choked out Jack Perry.
Mm.
And wow, what a dumb move.
For CM Punk to have done that?
Well, I'm not excusing his behavior. Let's put it that way. I mean, and this is ultimately not about CM Punk. I will say, like, even though professional wrestling is a story that is being told, athletics are still involved, and athletes do have tempers. Tempers do rise, and sometimes fights happen.
Mm.
It's just happens. It's just the thing is this: when you tune in as a viewer or you attend a show live, a professional wrestling show live, like I mentioned before, you as the audience member are suspending your disbelief. You are going into it knowing that they're telling a story, but you are letting the emotional side of your brain kind of ride along that wave as if it were an actual sporting event. And showing that video made no sense because there's just not going to be a payoff on it.
Mm.
It's not like CM Punk still works there. It's not like, 2, 3, 4 months down the road, CM Punk and Jack Perry will have a match that people will want to see. Because there are plenty of instances in professional wrestling history to where word had gotten out to fans that certain wrestlers didn't like each other. And then when you know it, they would have matches together because the people, if they know the two people don't really like each other that much in real life, want to pay more money just to see, hey, are they really going to like throw some potatoes, like stiff shots at each other during a particular match? But the people in the ring are also going to be making a lot of money too, for being able to put up working with someone they don't particularly like for a few months' time.
Sure.
But again, yeah, they're not going to have a match between Jack Perry and CM Punk, and they showed a current star of the WWE now choking out one of the wrestlers. A front face lock, can legitimately knock you out. Like Hulk Hogan did it to Richard Belzer on a talk show in the lead up to WrestleMania 1.
Whoa.
And then he put him in the chokehold, and Belzer went unconscious and then hit the back of his head and got a concussion and was bleeding from his head on the talk show.
Oh my God. What happened after that?
There was a lawsuit and a settlement, and with that money, Richard Belzer and his wife bought a chateau in France that they called Chateau Hogan. So Belzer was fine, but there was just no logic behind showing it other than the fact that CM Punk had gone on this YouTube show and talked about that incident. And it's like, when I initially told you about this a few weeks back when it happened, I compared it to like doing what AEW did, showing that footage would be like if this podcast were to somehow make it big, and then Apple found out what I've said about them over the years, and then decided to put out a commercial against me.
Uh-huh.
Like, it makes no sense. Why continue to bring up something that just makes you and your company look bad? But I didn't get the money from an inheritance myself. So, if I were a billionaire, I guess I could do that, which goes to the next part of the story here, because a couple weeks later, that Jack Perry fellow showed up on AEW Dynamite and called out Tony Khan and asked to be reinstated, because ever since that incident with CM Punk, Jack Perry had not been on AEW television. And Tony Khan, just like a goofy bastard, was smiling, giving a thumbs up and everything like that. And Jack Perry gave him a hug and then turned to the camera, had a mischievous look on his face, and then punched Tony Khan in the gut. And what's the first thing you do when you get punched in the gut? You do a standard wrestling bump, what they call a bump, the flat back bump. It's how they teach themselves to fall, to kind of like level out the impact of the fall and not focus it on one area. I guess it's quote unquote safe way to take a fall, but you don't get it from being punched in the gut.
Right.
And then other members of a group called the Elite, the Young Bucks, came out with a new person in their group, a guy from Japan that was signed from New Japan Pro Wrestling. And then
The blonde guy?
The blonde guy, yeah. Last name of Okada. I can't pronounce his first name, so I'm not even going to try. And it looked like that they were going to help Tony, but then they ended up giving him their dreaded finishing move that they called the Tony Khan driver.
The Tony Khan driver.
Yeah, which the move is, one of them will hold their opponent. In this case, Tony Khan was the opponent, and do essentially what is called a tombstone pile driver. That's where they hold a person up and then, they fall to their knees, but there's enough space, if it's done right, between the top of the opponent's head and the ground that the only thing that's having impact is the person's knees. And then the other person of the tag team does this flip to make it seem like it's slamming the person down, but it's just gymnastics. It's one of those moves that visually looks cool, but you're not going to see people breaking that out in like a street fight.
Sure.
Yeah. So the show goes off the air. Tony Khan's father, the owner of the Jacksonville Jaguars and an English soccer team, comes out as well, looking all concerned. And then the next day, the NFL draft happened. Tony Khan is the chief strategy officer of the Jacksonville Jaguars and appeared on the NFL Network in a neck brace.
Whoa.
But he wasn't selling the injury. Like there have been guys, wrestlers in the past, the actual athletes that have taken the pile driver, and in order to sell it, maybe put on a neck brace, but also didn't show up on national TV, a day later, moving their head around, like, which Tony Khan was doing. And I know some people that support this storyline have said, what's the difference between what Tony Khan did and what Andy Kaufman did? Because Andy Kaufman in 82, when he had his feud with Jerry Lawler, had a pile driver and was on national television for months with that neck brace on. He sold the move as if it actually happened to him. He wasn't moving his head all around or anything like that. He acted like he was in physical pain. Now, it was Kaufman, of course, and you weren't always sure with him, but so there was some element of laughing at him, yet he still respected business enough to sell the move as if it were real. And Tony Khan is on the NFL Network, goofing around, moving his head around. And then he even ended up saying at one point, AEW is like Pepsi and the WWE is like Harvey Weinstein.
Whoa.
I don't fucking know what that means, because it doesn't even make sense anymore since Vince McMahon has sold all of his stock. from the from the TKO Endeavor people, so he has no.
Yeah, but his whole family is associated with it.
His son-in-law is still there. He's Triple H, but they're not supporting him. Let's put it that way.
But I'm just saying he's preserving the value of that company, and that he may be motivated to do that because he's still receiving some benefit.
Not anymore. He has no stock in the company. He's not making one dime from that company anymore. It is not his. He has zero.
I understand what you're saying.
Yeah.
But what I'm saying is, if his children are benefiting, if his spouse is benefiting, or his ex-spouse, then he's benefiting.
I don't see how, because his children are grown adults. They have their own money. They're not kicking him 10% of what they're getting paid. And yeah, to your point as well, yeah, like he may still on paper be married to his wife Linda, but they don't live together. They haven't lived together in a long time. So, he would only still be benefiting in the sense that the name McMahon on occasion will still be mentioned on WWE TV or in documentary form, talking about the past. Okay, because he was a major player in, getting interest in professional wrestling nationwide and worldwide. You're not going to be able to not mention the history of pro wrestling without mentioning Vince McMahon, but that doesn't mean he's necessarily benefiting. Like, I think people know now what type of human being he is, and yeah, like he's not going to come back with like another wrestling promotion or anything like that. And I don't think people commenting about, stuff he may have done in the 90s with Stone Cold Steve Austin is somehow going to make him look better today, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, that's just my thought.
Okay, I accept that.
Yeah.
See, I tried to come up with something to say about the wrestling, but you convinced me I was wrong.
All right. For once, hey.
Only about wrestling.
Yeah. Well, overall, the AEW thing, I think those were two big mistakes that they made. Were they insurmountable mistakes? By no means. They still have national TV coverage on TBS and TNT, on cable. And, they do have a new potential TV deal coming up at some point this year. But, you also look at some of the numbers in terms of like the ratings. The ratings have been kind of dropping big time since CM Punk left the company. Pay-per-view buys have dropped. Live attendance has become so bad that most of the time they are pushing people only to the hard camera side. Anything behind the camera is just empty seats.
Well, yeah. I mean, That's what you would do.
That's what you would do if you're dumb. I mean, if you were smart and you were seeing that you were getting at most 2,000 people, there are plenty of smaller places out there that would be able to, think of like a convention center in a small town somewhere where wrestling used to be held back in the day. Holding them in smaller places is not a bad thing.
But don't they use the facilities of the football team?
What do you mean?
I mean, I thought there was an AEW person who was involved with the Jacksonville Jaguars.
Oh, Tony Khan. Yeah, he owns AEW, and the clip that we saw before we recorded, we watched the clip of Tony getting injured. That was at Daly Place, which is a little amphitheater next door to where the Jaguars play. So yeah, if they're in the Florida area, then AEW people will be able to show up and like use the gym and stuff like that. But they also travel around the country as well. I mean, they're, as we record this, they're going to be in town here within the next week or so.
Mm-hmm.
Again, like they're renting these NBA arenas for their shows and not filling them anywhere near close to capacity.
Mm-hmm.
And it's showing. And it's like, I say this, I bring this up as I don't want them to go out of business. I don't want them to lose their time slots. I want them to succeed. Mm-hmm. Because, I mean, think of it as like for workers alone. And there's already been plenty of tales how this has benefited people who their contracts may have come up in WWE. So they say, that, I mean, they have the ability to go to someplace else and say, what kind of contract would you offer me? And then go back to the WWE and say, these guys are offering me that. So can you offer me this? And, when you have a viable second option out there, it helps the workers out. But, more than anything, AEW just doesn't understand how to tell a story. It's like they are trying to make you fall in love with the Rocky movies by only showing you the boxing footage.
Mm-hmm.
And that is the last thing that really tells the story of Rocky. It's everything that goes into it.
Yes.
And I think it's the same thing with professional wrestling. You can have a lot of great matches per se, but if there's no story behind it, what does it really matter? The only reason certain matches are talked about, for years and years and years are because people had an emotional connection to the characters and the stories that were being told that brought them there. Not because, it was a 5-star match. Who cares?
Well, they're all such ridiculous matches.
What do you mean by ridiculous?
I mean, they're usually somebody gets really beat up and then they kind of stagger around for a while and you think they're about to fall down and die. But then all of a sudden they'll run up and pick somebody up and throw them back down on the floor. It's just the physicality of it is so weird.
It's part of the storytelling process, yeah, because the end of the match is predetermined. They can do what boxing or MMA cannot and, prolong stuff. So, similar to the Rocky films, for instance, you can have a character that's beat down and beat down and beat down, but then he just gets the courage to stand back up again and keep fighting. And it is hyperbolic. It's a heightened reality version of a sporting event. It's an action movie version of a sporting event.
Is it like Beyond Thunderdome?
I've never watched I've never watched an entire Mad Max film. What I've seen has bored me to tears, even though I respect George Miller.
Well, that's too bad. They're good movies.
Yeah. But if you meant wacky and silly with the outfits, then maybe.
Well,
I'll agree to that. But wrestling is weird. Wrestling is interesting. I love talking about it. Just wanted to put it out there. The events that are happening in AEW as we speak. And like I said, too, for anybody out there that are fans of AEW, I am not bringing this up as how dare they. They're the worst thing to ever happen to wrestling. I just want them to get better. Because if they get better, then it just helps the entire industry, period. And there needs to be a second viable national option for professional wrestling in the United States.
Okay, well,
all right.
You're very serious about it, so I believe you.
I'm Tim Josman. I approve this message.
It is election time around here.
Yeah. So what say, before we go to our main event, we send it over to one of our friends at the Deluxe Edition Network?
That sounds great. Let's do it.
All right. Hey, sit back, relax, and enjoy this message.
Hello, listeners, and welcome to Quad Pro Quo. Right now, you are probably thinking to yourself, oh great, another movie podcast. Well, dear listener, you would be right. But throw in a couple of marriages, decades-long friendships, and a shared property line, and you have just another movie podcast with a shitload of drama. Inspired by the iconic quid pro quo scene in Silence of the Lambs, each week, one of us will pick a movie. It could be a childhood favorite, a classic film noir, an Academy Award winner, or a complete dumpster fire that brings joy to that person's heart. The selector's objective? To get us to love, or at the very least, not hate their pick. Will our marriages, our friendships, and our neighborhood survive? Find out each Thursday on Quad Pro Quo.
Hey, Tim, before we get to our main event, would you like a cup of coffee?
Always. I live on that stuff.
Yeah?
Yeah. How do I get through the day otherwise? Caffeine, man.
Caffeine is the way. I
Amen.
agree. You've got to have caffeine in order to make it through the day. That is for sure. So I have this new coffee I would love for you to try because I absolutely adore it. And you know, I have really good tasting coffee.
You most definitely do, folks.
Yeah, so I have this new coffee from Coffee Brothers Coffee Bros. And they are a small roaster in New York City that's run by two brothers, which is why they call themselves Coffee Bro.
Imagine that.
I know, right? And they have this really great website that sells coffee that they make there in New York City, or they roast there. Sorry, they don't make it there. Obviously, they grow it in places where coffee grows.
Yeah, I don't think the South Bronx is a good place for coffee.
No.
In terms of growing coffee.
No, I think you have to be much closer to the equator.
Okay.
Yeah. Anyway, here, give it a try. What do you think?
Nom. So good, folks. So good. This is something I recommend we all try.
Yeah, okay. Well, you know, it's an award-winning coffee, and it's got really great blends, espresso roasts, and single origin coffees, which are all small batch roasted, you guys, in New York City. And we're in Portland, as you know, the home of amazing coffee. But for my coffee at home, I'm going to go for Coffee Bros.
And a reason I would go to Coffee Bros myself is because I love a good discount.
Oh my God. Yes, you do, Mr. Frugal.
Yes, if you go to their website, which you can go to our show description, and it will have a link there that will take you directly to their site, coffeebros.com. If you purchase some coffee from their website, and when it prompts you to put in the promo code, you put in FTN10, you're going to save 10% off of your order.
Wow, that's awesome.
It definitely is.
I hope everybody takes advantage of this wonderful opportunity to get 10% off this fabulous coffee.
I hope so too. Again, people, coffeebros.com. You can find a link in our show description, and at checkout, in the promo code area, put in FTN10. Let's drink some coffee, baby.
Okay.
I have been a pretty introverted person most of my life. People that know me in real life now are surprised that I do have a passion like podcasting, because of how little I interact with other human beings unless it's absolutely necessary to do. But yeah, I've been an introvert for most of my life. How about you?
I may be an ambivert.
Ambivert, yeah.
Ambivert. But I currently am leaning towards introvert. But at one time, I think I was an extrovert.
Well, I think too, and that would be a different topic for a different day. But I don't think there's anybody really that does fall into one entire category. I think there is going to be some give or take, and in the article that we're going to be talking about here, we'll dive into that somewhat. But I don't think there are people that are 100% introverted or 100% extroverted. I think a lot of it doesn't revolve around how they grew up, deal with various traumas, their environment, stuff like that.
Yeah.
But as we said, we're going to be discussing an article this time from the website Hack Spirit. It is by Lucas Graham. I don't know what his bona fides are, so this could be coming from a psychologist. It could be coming from just an average guy. Who knows?
How can we find out?
Written by Lucas Graham, who writes about psychology behind everyday decisions and life choices. His perspective is grounded in the belief that understanding oneself is the key to better decision-making. Lucas's articles are a mix of personal anecdotes and observations, offering readers relatable and down-to-earth advice. Basically what we do on the show here.
Right. Only in writing.
Yeah. The article in question here, nine things introverts do that extroverts just don't understand. We both looked through it, and yeah, we're having a little fun at Mr. Lucas's expense right here. But I think the article itself does have some interesting points that me as an extrovert, I think I can speak on, and I think
As an extrovert.
as an introvert, sorry. 9 things introverts do that extroverts just don't understand. What we're going to do is do what we always do for articles like this, bounce back and forth for the bullet points, read the bullet points, and then have a discussion here to talk about it, so that if there are any extroverts out there that just are quizzical on why people are introverted, I think this can be a great little starter for them.
Sure.
Yep. All right. So did you want me to start off with number 1, or did you?
No. Let me start off.
Ooh.
Okay.
Wow, that was forceful. It's like, sit down, Tim. I'm reading this.
Yes, I've got a very businesslike attitude for some reason. It's because you made me mad with the joke.
Okay.
Okay, so the first one is need for solitude. One thing that extroverts often find perplexing is an introvert's need for solitude. For extroverts, the idea of spending significant amounts of time alone can seem strange and perhaps even a little lonely. But for introverts, this solitude is not only enjoyable but necessary. Solitude is where introverts recharge. It's our time to process our thoughts, to reflect on our experiences, and to simply be with ourselves. This doesn't mean we don't enjoy the company of others. In fact, we value our relationships deeply, but we also recognize the importance of spending time alone to maintain our mental well-being. Absolutely true.
I agree.
I think particularly for me as an introvert, I need solitude after having to act extroverted, whether it's a work context or a friend context. When I would I have to, I do that and I enjoy whatever I'm doing, but afterwards I need solitude in order to recharge.
Yeah, I've been in that boat many, many, many times, and I'm sure I will be again. It was especially bad when I worked retail. The level of introvert that I am, with the type of retail and computer repair that I ultimately did, wasn't a right mix. And I would go home and just like crash. I couldn't do anything, just because I was just mentally strained and I needed that just break.
Totally.
Now, the thing too is, like, as someone who does have a decent amount of solitude, throughout his weekly journey here, it is important to understand when there is too much solitude. Like you do have to be cognizant of the fact that you have to go out sometimes, but you shouldn't necessarily pressure yourself either to go above and beyond what you are comfortable with. Just, it is important to challenge yourself to, do more, because if it were up to me all the time, it would be just work and then coming home and then going back to work and then coming home and not doing much else. And that isn't healthy. That's not healthy. I'm the first to admit that. But when you don't have much money, sometimes it saves you a lot more money to have that attitude, that behavior as well.
That's true. It's a very frugal way to be. That's absolutely true.
Yep.
Let's go on to the next one.
All right. Number 2, preferring one-on-one conversations. Introverts, like the author, often prefer one-on-one conversations over group discussions. This is something that puzzles many extroverts. For instance, at a recent family gathering, I find myself gravitating towards my cousin. We ended up having a meaningful conversation about our careers and future plans. Meanwhile, the rest of the family was engaged in a lively group discussion. To an extrovert, my behavior might have seemed antisocial or disinterested, but it's not that I don't enjoy the company of my entire family. It's just that I find deep, focused conversations more satisfying than being part of multiple overlapping discussions. This preference for one-on-one interactions allows us introverts to forge deeper connections and understand people on a more personal level. It's not about being exclusive, it's about engaging in a way that feels most authentic to us. For me, I definitely find myself doing this because also I think in the bigger group settings, like that's described in this bullet point here of like family gatherings, for instance, a lot of it is just shooting a breeze. the type of conversation slash non-conversations that some people can have to where it sounds like something deep is happening, but they're not really doing that, if that makes sense. The kind of the superficial, like shooting the breeze type of deal. I've never been good at just shooting the breeze, like, how's the weather? It's different if it's a topic I'm interested in, but then again, that goes to more of the one-on-one conversations. It's not having conversations with 7 people at once, where I'm talking about wrestling or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, that's like public speaking.
Well, in a way, I mean, if you take the example that was in the article, like at a family gathering, there are people like my grandmother, for instance, when, she wasn't suffering with dementia and much younger, she was the type that could, have, a group conversation with like 20, like 20 people or so in that group, that she's talking to each and every one of them. Just, remember this, but me, again, one-on-one.
Yeah,
I thrive
definitely me
better that way.
too.
Unless you have any other thoughts, how about you go on to number 3?
No, let's talk about number 3, which is comfort with silence. Introverts are often comfortable with silence, which can be puzzling to extroverts who are more used to filling the air with conversation. This comfort comes from an understanding that science isn't always a bad thing. Silence is not science. Science is never a bad thing, but silence isn't always a bad thing. In fact, researchers found that silence can actually have some fascinating benefits. It can aid in stress relief, improve memory, and even promote brain growth. As introverts, we don't feel the need to fill every moment with words. We're content to sit in companionable silence, allowing thoughts and ideas to form at their own pace. It's not about being aloof or disinterested, but rather about appreciating the peace and potential that silence can offer. Yeah, I am, I really enjoy silence with people.
I enjoy silence alone at home as well. I mean, as an introvert, sometimes it is nice just to be able to sit, you know. I've been making a habit lately of bird watching on Saturdays with my cats. And just sitting there, just quiet, watching, trying to see if the crows would come by and watching the cat being rested. That's definitely allows me to recharge a bit. But yeah, also too, when it comes to group settings, like, uh, I am comfortable with not saying anything if I don't feel I can offer anything productive. If it is me talking with the, shooting the breeze mindset, like it's not going to work anyway. So I do that.
Yeah, I mean, I guess you have nothing to lose and nothing to gain. Yeah, I mean, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. To me, I guess the best silence is you got to think like a Silent Bob, from the Clerks movies. Like, I would rather be like that to where I'm not saying anything, but when I do say something, it's meaningful and impactful, than constantly running my mouth and having the gold nuggets I may occasionally throw out ignored because I talk too much.
Yeah,
Yeah. All right, shall I go on to the next one?
you should.
All right, number 4, deep thinkers. Introverts are often deep thinkers, which can sometimes be misunderstood by extroverts. We like to take our time to process information and reflect on our thoughts and experiences. While extroverts may be quick to voice their thoughts or make decisions, introverts tend to mull things over. We may appear reserved or slow to respond, but it's simply because we're taking the time to fully form out our ideas before sharing them. Guess what? This depth of thought can lead to insightful observations and innovative ideas. It's not about being slow or indecisive, but rather valuing thoroughness and reflection in our thought process. I do find myself doing that a lot too, especially when it comes to like stressful situations that can come along. I don't want to be the type of person that reacts. I want to act on the best possible decision that a particular situation deserves. Now, has that always happened? Of course not. We have plenty of episodes to show me screwing up in life. But overall, though, I do find there is great value in holding that initial urge to react until you've had the time to properly think about the situation, so you know how to hopefully get a resolution that is happy. And I'm not even necessarily talking about situations that are negative by chance. I mean, it could be something better as well. But let's take it in a relationship thing. It's early in a relationship, energy is still going, but you haven't gotten to the point where you've expressed love yet or anything like that. Instead of impulsively doing the "I love you, marry me" type of deal, taking the time to think about it, and and then by the time you actually are able to express that to the person, it's done in the right way.
Yeah, totally. Just, everything you're saying, I totally relate to. I have to think about things for a long time too.
Mm-hmm.
But sometimes I think it's overthinking.
Overthinking is definitely a thing. Just because you are a deep thinker doesn't mean you're thinking the right ways, all the time too. I mean, there are some situations that do require spontaneity, and if your instinct is to be that deep thinker and deep think everything, you're gonna miss out on some opportunities, and you're also gonna make some bad decisions along the way too.
It's balance in all things.
Yes, agreed.
That's why I like to think I'm an ambivert. Ambivert.
One of those.
Ambivert.
Ambidextrous. All right. How about you going to number 5?
Number 5, observant nature. Introverts are often highly observant, a trait that could sometimes be misunderstood by extroverts. While extroverts are typically the ones engaging and driving the conversation, introverts are usually in observation mode. We tend to take in our surroundings, notice small details, and understand the nuances of a situation. This might make us seem disengaged or distant in social settings, but really it's just our way of interacting with the world. Our observant nature allows us to pick up on things that others might miss. It's not about being standoffish or uninterested. It's about taking in the world around us in a thoughtful and detailed manner. Yeah, man. I love to just observe things.
It gives you more knowledge, I guess. I mean, I think this does tie into the deep thinking part, because if you're like at a party, for instance, let's say it's a work party, they happen. Maybe you know people, but maybe you don't know them as much. And if you're the introverted type, observing people at the start of a work party or something like that, you'll get an idea of which people are going to be the ones that you're going to be comfortable hanging around, and which ones you're probably best to avoid, if that makes sense.
Yes.
And yeah, it's not about being like Sherlock Holmes or anything like that, to where you're telling the person across from you, that little speck of dust you have on your left arm sleeve is from this particular restaurant that you were at this particular day, or something like that. But it's just about knowing. For me, I guess it's about knowing where you fit in. Taking that time to observe, the people that, you're going to be super comfortable with. Like, if I'm out dancing, I don't necessarily want to be in the middle of the people that have the brightest colored outfits and are the most physically out there dancing, because I would look like the Republican in the group.
You sure would.
Yes.
I really think about how, if you're an observant person like this, and observing other people's behavior, sometimes it can seem like you're standoffish, as Lucas says, but you're really not. You're just kind of exactly trying to figure out, what is my place in this? It's just like dogs sniffing each other, right? They're like, where's my place in this hierarchy?
Yeah, not this, but how about this one? Yeah.
I mean, friendship is not like that, but there is this sense of...
But in a sense, though, it's not about friends.
I was using hierarchy as like taxonomy, or anything that is like...
Yeah, it's people find groups of others that most resemble what they feel is closest to them. a weird way of putting it, I guess, but those are the type of people you're ultimately attracted to, whether it be platonic, friendship wise, or otherwise, just people that you feel a connection with. Like, if we want to go the romantic side, like, I am not going to ever be comfortable with like a woman who's like has to be in like dresses every day and spends 3 hours at the makeup thing every day or anything like that. It's a super feminine type of deal. It's like I know that wouldn't work. And that has come through observation and just seeing, what type of stuff they would like, what type of stuff I like, and just oil, water,
Well, it's interesting. You can't, at the same time, you can't judge a book by its cover.
Oh yeah, like there are no absolutes here. Like just there are no absolutes. Blah blah blah. But I mean, you get my point. Anyway, shall I go on to the next one?
Yeah, let's go on to the next one.
All right, yeah, good one here. Number 6, valuing deeper connections. Introverts play by a different rulebook when it comes to relationships. It's all about quality over quantity. Sure, our social circles might not rival a celebrity's entourage, but the friendships we nurture run deep, like roots anchoring us in a storm. To the extroverts out there, our approach might seem a tad perplexing. While they're out there collecting acquaintances like trading cards, we're crafting connections with the care and precision of master artisans. Very understandable here. Like, as an introvert myself, like, I don't have a huge friends list myself, but those people, I would fall on a sword for, just like I think they would fall on a sword for me, type of deal, if that makes sense. We have that connection. I'm basically just not the type of person that's going to be able to be quote unquote friends with everybody. The type of super close, not even super close, but it's gregarious. It can seem super close, but in ways it's still superficial in a sense for the extroverted people that can be quote unquote friends with everybody, because they can't offer, same type of attention to you as it would if you had a smaller social circle.
What's interesting is I think that as introverts, we can't at all know what it's like to feel extroverted. So we're looking from the outside in
and
assuming what other people feel.
And that is the point of this article too. Good point. My logic, I guess, I'm not. I mean, I think of that Chris Rock bit where he talked about the guys from Columbine, where he was like, there were 7 of those motherfuckers. I didn't have 7 friends in high school. I don't have 7 friends now. So I definitely get that now. Do you have any thoughts on that, or did you want to go on to number 7?
Chris Rock is ridiculously terrible.
Why do you say that?
Because, it's a joke about Columbine.
Yeah.
Anyway, overthinking, which is probably what I'm doing right now.
Number 7.
As an introvert, I often find myself overthinking situations. This can range from replaying conversations in my head to worrying about future events. While this may seem like a negative trait to some, it is simply part of being an introvert. We process things deeply, which means we tend to mull over situations more than others might. For example, after a social gathering, I might spend hours analyzing the conversations I had, fretting over whether I had said something wrong or could have expressed myself better. This overthinking isn't about being anxious or insecure, but rather a reflection of our deep internal processing. It's just one of the many ways we engage with and understand the world around us. I don't find it enjoyable. I don't find it an enjoyable way of observing life around us.
It can definitely lead you down some very stressful, anxious-ridden, and sad roads. Doing the overthinking. Like take breakups, for instance. Let's say you had a pretty nasty breakup or something like that, but it was a relationship that was short, that happened in a short period of time. Like I've still found myself like in my head running over events again and again and again, just like what if this had happened, what if this had happened? And yeah, there is something to be said that overthinking you can go to extremes with that. But on the other hand, like I brought up as well too, taking the time to think about a response that you need to make is overthinking as well, and that in and of itself is not a bad thing. I don't think. It's to your point, what you said earlier. It is about balance. If you do find yourself overthinking every single situation, like if you have a negative situation at work, for instance, and you run it over in your head over and over again, and we've all been there. It it doesn't lead anywhere good until you put some physical action into place. Like if you're overthinking, like, hey, did I say the wrong thing to my cousin Irma at a family reunion? Instead of spending 3 days thinking about it, call cousin Irma and try and resolve it if you can. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but that's very difficult for an introvert to do.
Understandable. Again, preach to the choir. I know it's easier said than done.
I think, the thing about this for me is that I always have something to overthink about. Like, it might be different things on different days, but I can overthink about many, many things.
Same here.
But it's usually only one thing at a time, luckily.
One major thing for me, and then sometimes little minor things get tied up into it as well, and just a whole fucking mess. All right, shall I go on with number 8?
Yes.
All right. Enjoying quiet hobbies. Introverts often enjoy quiet hobbies, which can puzzle extroverts who thrive on more social or active pastimes. We might spend our free time reading, writing, gardening, or engaging in other solitary activities. These quiet hobbies aren't about avoiding people, but rather about finding joy and satisfaction in peaceful pursuits. They allow us to relax, focus, and engage with our thoughts and interests in a satisfying way. Now, this doesn't mean that we don't enjoy group activities or outdoor adventures, but when it comes to winding down and recharging, you'll often find us happily immersed in our quiet hobbies. And I'm glad they brought up games too, because I have met people that, their lives are, their lives too hyperbolic to say, but, a lot of their social life is built around collecting board games and playing board games with as many people as they can. And board games are fun. I'm not against board games, but sometimes just being able to, like pop on Civilization 5 on my computer and play that for a few hours is fun. Being able to play the guitar, even, for only 5 minutes at a time or whatever, is fun. Being able to play a video game and blow stuff up in San Andreas on GTA 5 is fun. And just solitary pursuits like that, and also writing is fun when you're in that groove. And I have had extroverts in my life question why I don't go out more and do stuff like that. And in terms of like the board games, for instance, and it's just like, I don't necessarily want that level of social interaction when it comes to a game.
Interesting. So the things that you have fun doing are things that you do by yourself.
Either by myself or something that I can, do with like one other or maybe two other people at the very most. Like, I'm not a type of person that's gonna, bring out like a Dungeons and Dragons thing in a game and invite 10 people over so we can all play that game for 3 hours. That would be way too much for me.
Right.
But having said that, would I be against that ever happening? By no means. I mean, I've done Dungeons and Dragons before. I've played board games before. It's just, there are people that do, when they do have their entertainment like that, want to have it in a much more social setting than me.
Yeah. And that's okay.
That is okay. Yeah. But like I said before too, it is important, to challenge yourself at times to be able
to try to achieve balance.
To achieve balance. Yeah. I mean, again, I'm talking just dip a toe out of that little social bubble of yours. You don't have to dive into the deep end just like it's an Arctic plunge in the middle of February.
Nope. You can ease into it.
Ease on down that road.
Yeah.
How about you wrap things up here?
Down to number 9. Easing down to number 9.
Number 9?
Need for personal space. I need personal space. The most vital thing to understand about introverts is our need for personal space. This isn't about being antisocial or disliking people. It's about maintaining our mental and emotional health. So true. Personal space is where we possess our thoughts, recharge, and simply exist without the need for external stimulation. When our personal space is respected, we're able to better engage with the world around us. So keep in mind, if an introvert retreats for a while, it's not a reflection on you. It's just us taking care of our needs in the way that we know best. So I can see this definitely in a physical sense. That is, I'm not a hugger. I don't like get close to people and talk to them really close. Like I'd like to have an arm span around me.
LBJ, apparently one of his quirks, and I guess one of the ways that he got as many people to do the things that he wanted when he was president was he would get right up in people's faces. He would not respect their personal space at all. And, you know, when you have the president of the United States getting up nose to nose with you and talking to you, or coming out of the Oval Office waving his dick around, which he's done, which he did. But it's like people would, I can understand being uncomfortable and just, yeah, I'll do whatever you want. Just, I gotta go.
Yeah, just get me out of here.
Type of deal. But also, too, like on a different note here, I have had extroverted friends that have had like the weekly game nights that have invited me, and I've gone before and done it, but not in a weekly type of manner. And I'm sure they were like, why doesn't he come over every week? Why do, you know, and it's not, again, a personal thing, but it's just not me. I don't thrive, you know, when it comes to like game nights or whatever. They're fun occasionally, but I'm not the type of person that has the desire to do it every single week. And for me, that's part of my personal space, you know, like my time is part of that space as well. You know, it's not the physical, to me, it's not just physical space we're talking about, you know, it's the time space as well, if that makes sense.
The time, space, warp.
Yeah, I mean, if you got like a weekend to your, you know, like a weekend, for instance, that's time that, you know, you have for whatever you want to do, I guess. And if you feel you want to use that time to either just hang out with yourself or one very close friend and not do a game night every single week, then nothing wrong with that.
No, and I don't think anybody's saying there is anything wrong with that. I mean, that's pretty extreme. I think you know, you're presenting two very starkly black and white examples there. Like there's definitely a gray area between those things.
Yeah, or maybe I just met some really supremely extroverted people that need, I don't know. But space, important.
Yeah.
It's important. Any other thoughts on being an introvert?
You know, the more we've talked, I definitely feel like I'm an ambivert because I relate to some of the things, but some of the things I'm just like, that's whack.
Yeah, like how many introverts?
I'm like judging you exactly like the article said.
Yeah, you are.
I totally am.
Well, while you're off doing the Burning Man stuff, I'll be here in my solitude.
Yeah.
But hey, that's two peas in a pod, right?
Mm-hmm.
All right. Life of an introvert, people. Life of an introvert. So, thank you all for listening. For the most electrifying professor in podcasting today, each Monday we'll have something in this podcast space to entertain your ear holes. Until we meet again, we bid you adieu.
Farewell.
Auf Wiedersehen. Subscribe to Friends Talking Nerdy
On YouTube Music, Apple Podcasts, Spotify,
or wherever you listen to podcasts.
Goodbye, darling.